Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale, as well as the latest episode of Deadly Class. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when to start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Riverdale, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Deadly Class. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Riverdale. Quite a few surprises in this episode. A whole lot went down. For one, Archie being back on his feet, everything's okay. I did not see that coming. I thought we'd see him kind of recovering a little bit in the hospital and stuff like that. It's like, no. And he's back in Riverdale. Like, that was something I did not. But I mean, I guess to be fair, you never know with the time frame and stuff like that. It could have been weeks in between episodes and stuff like that. But to be fair, after like bleeding out like he did like that, a bear attack and stuff, you think he'd be kind of down for the count a little bit. But I guess with everything he went through before, it kind of pushed him to kind of, push on. And now he's back in Riverdale. And it adds this interesting element of like Archie, and it's something that, Jughead says in the, the voiceover, being like, Archie isn't the same person they knew. He's kind of a stranger. Certain aspects about him has changed. It's kind of interesting. Like, one of the first people he went back to obviously was his dad, but it seemed like he was hesitant to go back to Veronica. I guess maybe he was scared of like her reaction, especially with everything that kind of went down between them, him kind of leaving the way he did. But, it almost seems like things pick up, but like they start making out. I'm like, oh, what about Reggie? But then she talks to Reggie about it, and it's like, oh, for him, he tries to be like, no, I understand. But you could definitely tell Reggie was bugged by it the entire episode, because anytime it cut to him, he just, like, especially when it was at Veronica's spot, she's singing the song to Archie and everything, and you could see Reggie over there kind of brooding a little bit because it bothered him a lot. But it's the little things here and there about Archie that kind of changed, not just his hair, but even, kind of washes the dye out and kind of goes back to his red hair. But I think that in itself could be a giant metaphor for Archie's situation. The fact of the matter is, he hasn't come back to be the same person, even if he changes things on the outside, who he was, who he became, after everything. There's no going back from that. It's kind of sad too, because Archie started off on this nice trajectory, and around season 2 things got a little murky, but he kind of went back on the up and up, and then it's like ever since then he's kind of been like, season 2 was where things kind of really spiraled out for Archie, and I feel like he's just been spiraling ever since, just because it's been one thing after another that just kind of keeps beating him down and causing the problems and stuff like that. So it's just interesting to kind of see the spiraling kind of almost hit another level, because, everything in his head, like, for one, it's like he realizes just how much of his life he missed just because of everything, probably being on trial and everything for Cassidy's murder, and then, being locked up in juvie, then being on a run. It was just like, once again, one thing after another, and looking at everything like, wait, how am I supposed to know all this? And it's like SATs are here, like, so much of like their lives in their future. It's that thing of like Archie's come back to find out like so much of his life has moved on without him. So many of the people he cares about have moved on without him, because the whole Reggie, like, I like that Reggie kind of snapped at him. He's like, yo, how'd you do that to Veronica? Like, bouncing, like, she was singing that song for you and everything. But then he sees the scar on Archie's chest, and he's like, what the hell was that? He's like, I got attacked by a bear. He's like, whoa, no wonder you're so messed up. And it's just kind of, and he also lets it slip about him and Veronica. And that causes a complicated thing, because even Veronica's like, the fact of the matter, she was pissed at her dad, but she was more so pissed at Archie because Archie left without fighting. It's like, you should have fought and stayed by my side, but you didn't. You left, and I would miss you like crazy, but I got tired of missing you, so kind of things ended the way they did in that regard. But also you have Archie kind of spiraling, because it's like, he's, like I said, driven by everything that's going down, with Hiram and just everything that's happened to him. And then to the point he's kind of like, it's almost like he's and even talks about it. He's like, he's pretending. He's trying to slip back into the skin that is Archie Andrews, and he can't do it. It doesn't fit anymore. It's like, this suit he used to wear for so long that was kind of his identity is now, it just doesn't fit right anymore. And you can see it it's making him spiral even more. He's to the point, it almost seems like he's almost having panic attacks because of it. Just flashes of just everything that's going down. Plus what went down in his, head last episode. Him, killing Hiram in his head, just kind of killing the old him. It feels like probably coming back to Riverdale, he's kind of suffocating to a certain extent, you know? And I think that's such an interesting thing. And what makes that even more interesting is the fact is that I didn't expect anything to play out the way it did. Like the whole Hiram, I was curious about that. Kind of felt like Hiram wasn't going to come, but I was curious if he did, what was going to happen with Archie being in front of him, because him and Archie haven't been face to face subsequently since Archie came back, you know. So I was curious, especially after Archie's experiences, what would that have meant? And so, but it ended up being Claudius, which Claudius ended up getting made sheriff, which that was interesting because Claudius was like, no, I'm good, and Hiram's like, you act like you have a choice, dude. It's like, I'm telling you, not giving you a choice. I'm telling you to do this. Because even Penelope's like, I probably don't want to do that, you know, considering what happened to our last sheriff, Minetta. Still never found that head. And it's like, geez. Ugh. It's like, no wonder Claudius would be like, yeah, I don't want that job. No shape or form, you know. So that's interesting, which that gets even more interesting with everything later on. But I'll get to that in a second. But the sad thing about it is that there's even a part of Veronica's brain that would thought that Archie might have done it. I don't think he did. Obviously, it seems like it's a go-to to go to Archie. But to be fair, you got a long list of suspects who could have put a bullet in Hiram. There are so many people that want, literally Fred could have done it. Can't put it past Hermione to have done it either. Maybe FP. I haven't seen him for a while, but I wouldn't be too shocked if Sheriff Keller wasn't one behind it. Could it be people from the farm? Because they ended up buying the Sisters of Quiet Mercy. They ended up buying that, and that's going to be their operations and stuff. But Hiram was talking about buying it himself, and so they had already put bets in and stuff, money in for it. Now that could lean towards Hermione, potentially her and FP. I'll finish my thought really quickly. The whole thing of the fact is that Veronica would even think that Archie has something to do with it. It was just kind of heartbreaking to him because it's you would even think that I'd crossed that line. I mean, to be fair, he's kind of completely submitted to that darkness. For him, it was I got to get strong. I got to cut away my weakness. But that weakness is the only thing that kept you from crossing the line. He's gone to that point many times in the past, a lot in season 2 where he crossed that line to a certain extent, but he was able to come back with what he's done now. Not that he did anything in this case, but killing that side of himself, that good-natured kid he was. I think killing who he was back in season 1, who he's always been most of his life, I think that's going to push him on a path he might not be able to come back from. But getting back to what I was saying, because it seems like Hermione and FP kind of have something some team duo thing going on there. Because even Hermione wasn't privy to a lot of stuff that apparently Hiram was up to. It's a lot of expansions she knew nothing about. It seemed like Hiram wasn't even really listening to her, even to the point threatening her. It's no, this is good for everyone, especially you. It's for our family, but especially you should. It was a quiet threat. I mean, to be fair, Hermione's made that clear too. It's she thought about it too with Veronica being oh, you're daddy's little girl. He never hurt you. I can't say the same thing about me. That's why she's kind of always been okay with everything he's done. But it's it seems like Hermione's kind of got her own plans, especially because FP becomes sheriff later on, and even Jughead's looking wait, what? The serpents and stuff like that are celebrating, but it's why would he make that decision? Because the thing is, I'm sure he also didn't tell Jughead he was doing that, just by Jughead's reaction. But not only that, he made such a point about avoiding the lodges, yet you're working with Hermione. She's the one that kind of potentially set that all up. And it seems like that was more so kind of to spite Hiram, that, higher. I mean, we end up finding out later on that Claudius is dead too. It's geez. And we also found out Tall Boy is not actually dead. He's alive. But then later on, it's nope, he's actually dead again because Fangs and Sweet Pea were watching him, but Fangs ended up shooting him. And it's gee, I wasn't expecting that Tall Boy reveal. I was it's going to be someone it's not going to be I was who's it going to be? Is it going to be some crazy reveal that not really be the real Gargoyle King? But it turned out to be him. I was wow, I guess that's the case. At least in some of the instances, we might have kind of an instance where it's someone else is parading around. He might be kind of the stand-in, because it's he admits to being the one that broke into Alice and Betty's house, the one scaring them that night. That was him. But also he's the one that talked about carving the symbol into Joaquin's head. So it's like, okay, so was he full on a Gargoyle King? I doubt it. I'm sure he was just kind of, I don't know, because it's interesting because that all ties into, well, it ties into Betty's story in an interesting way because, like, well, for one, Betty ends up finding out that Alice drained all her accounts, which includes her college fund, which is kind of like, so Alice is so far gone, she's not realizing how messed up that he's in. Even I'm like, geez, that's fucked up. It's especially the way Alice has kind of always seemed like she was pushing Betty to be like, oh, you've got this bright future ahead of you. It always seemed like that was Alice's push, wanting Betty to kind of almost be perfect, to get by in this world and stuff like that. Especially, Alice always kind of seemed like she was like that herself. I mean, to be fair, we know her back in her day was very rebellious. We've kind of got instances of that. But for her to do something like that and be like, oh, it's all for the farm and stuff like that. But it's like, the thing is, you did that behind her back. Like, it's like, what about my college fund? It's like, but it's like, oh, you can always go to, study at the farm for free. And she's like, you're literally not going to quarter me into studying at your, joining your cult. She ends up talking to her dad because the signature on it needed to be from both parents. The signature from Hal was a forgery. She went to go see him. Then he starts talking about griffins and gargoyles, and it's like, wait, what? How the hell do you know about this? Bam, I was there all those years ago. I was the Gargoyle King. What? But then that ended, I would have thought, I was like, that's crazy if that's the case. Then, because for him, especially because he was like, oh, if that's the case, that means I can help you catch the present day. When I'm like, okay, because it seemed like it kind of had a little bit, I mean, I guess that's kind of what they were kind of going from aesthetically. It's kind of like a Silence of the Lambs. And what's so interesting, just kind of in general about the Hannibal Lecter movies, I don't think I've ever sat down and saw a whole one. I remember I've seen bits and pieces of Silence of the Lamb when I was younger and just like bits and pieces over the years, but I don't think I've ever sat through that entire movie. I know it's a good movie, and especially because I like crime dramas and stuff. That's one of those movies I need to kind of make more of an effort to go back to. That I just never, I mean, I've seen bits and pieces of all the Hannibal Lecter movies and stuff like that, but it's just kind of in the back of my head. It just seemed like kind of like a Silence of the Lamb kind of aesthetic they were going for. It's interesting the parallels they're making because, like, now Betty's kind of, it's not just Archie that's slipping into the darkness, kind of everyone in his circle is, because Betty's shifting over because Howard said all that stuff because he was just making excuses, because like I said, I was thinking it would be interesting because I helped catch the serial killer, and that's how he ended up dragging Betty back in, but it's like, no, all of that was a lie. He had nothing to do with it because apparently him and Penelope have been shacking up. She's doing her thing, I mean, no judgment or whatever, but it's like, oh yeah, she's been there for conjugal visits, because she was pretending to be Alice. Even because when it was like, oh, Alice has been visiting, I was like, what? What is up with Alice? Like, she's lying and stuff like that. She's forging his signature. Because I was thinking, I mean, the fact of the matter is she would go out of her way to forge those signatures should mean that she didn't visit Hal. Why would she visit him every Monday if that was the case? So that should have been a kind of like a clue in my head, but it wasn't. And it's just kind of like, oh, okay, so that was all kind of a lie. So, I mean, why would even Penelope tell him stuff like that? I mean, maybe because he wanted to, or I don't know. Like, she kind of joked about it, but it seems like she does kind of potentially have a thing for bad people. I mean, the whole Clifford situation, now this. I mean, she's not with Hiram, but she's with him, not in an intimate sense, but more so working with. So it's not like she's the whole idea of hanging around bad people is foreign to her. It's kind of what she's kind of grown up in knowing, so. Which is crazy, especially when you consider, looking at the Midnight Club episode. Did I say Midnight Club? Was that it? Yeah. I don't know why. It sounded wrong in my head. That she was very different than who she is right now. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of the point that so many of them ended up changing, from who they were back then just because of life and just everything that kind of went down. But, like I said, I'm curious, what other reason would she have to have told him? Now, I guess because as a serial killer, because even he looks up to the Gargoyle King because it's like, oh, the Gargoyle Kings claimed 14 souls. Impressive. And it's like, Betty's like, of course you'd be interested in a kill count and stuff like that. But it also turns out the money Betty got taken from her that Alice sent to the farm is also being used to buy the Sisters of Quiet Mercy. And now, like I said, the dynamic shifts because now Betty's like, people have no idea what mom's capable of, who she really is. And Hal's like, yeah, it's so messed up. The fact of the matter is, how were the SATs? How did you do? She's like, I think I did good. When she fought so strongly at the beginning, be like, we're not going to have those regular conversations because all he wants is those father-daughter moments. He even said it like, you claimed you weren't going to come back before, but look where we are now. So I think that's going to be something we see even more. As it's interesting because now the dynamic switch where it's like she's leaning in more towards where her dad kind of turning against her mom. To be fair, her mom's not in the best place either. Maybe this farm situation isn't going to turn out as bad as we think it is. Maybe it is kind of starting off a little cultish, but the fact of the matter is, Alice seems like she always does things the extreme. She's always extremes in some certain regards. We saw that, even as her as a mom, she was kind of very extreme in certain regards. So it's like every avenue Alice ever goes, I think she always goes the most extreme route. So maybe in the end of the day, we'll find out that the farm isn't that bad and that, Betty was just caught up in her own investigation mind and that kind of played into it. Or maybe we will find out that the farm is just as bad, like I said, and they might be the ones behind the hit on Hiram. Because that's the crazy thing. It's like Hiram's always known about seeing stuff come. Because in my mind, I was about to say, wasn't he on the phone with Hermione at that time? So it couldn't have been her. But then it's like, who's to say she wasn't actually still talking on the phone and she could have easily just shot him? Or once again, it could have just been someone else. She could have gotten FP to do it, especially since they seem like they might be a team. The question in that regard is like, how far does this partnership go back? Because everything she did back in season 1 was about, Hiram, but it's like she was working with FP back then, but now it's like, is this something new or has this always been in the works behind the scenes? Was it something that was happening even before Hiram came back? I doubt that. Because once again, we still don't 100% know what Hiram was doing in that 5 weeks that Riverdale was kind of closed off to everyone, from the outside, the quarantine and all that. So then we have Archie drinking and kind of working out. Even Fred being like, this room almost feels like a prison because it seems like he's kind of shedding who he was, trying to figure out this new person, but it just looks like you see him drowning and it just breaks your heart because you see him drowning like that, because it's like, it seems like he's got this smile on his face, but I think it's just a cover of him trying to become a new person, because it's like, nah, Archie was weak. I'm not weak anymore. I'm strong. So we'll see about that. Then there's the whole Reggie and Veronica thing. Reggie came rushing over. Veronica didn't even have to call him. She had to call Archie a couple of times, but to be fair, everything considered. I mean, it's even interesting to me that Archie would show up concerned. I mean, to be fair, it's like no matter what the circumstances are, that's still Veronica's dad. No matter how much grief he causes you, he's still her dad, and him being hurt is still, shocking. But it's like, the fact of the matter is, you literally thought about killing the dude. You threatened to kill the dude, and now that he's kind of shot and stuff, now you're concerned. That's where you kind of go yeah, there might be something fishy there. But like I said, Archie is the most obvious choice. There's no way it actually was him. I don't think, because if he was going to do it, I kind of get the feeling, because Archie currently doesn't have a gun. If he were going to do anything, it probably would be up close and personal, in his head, but I could be completely wrong about that. So then on top of that, you have the whole Sweet Pea thing, with the whole Tall Boy situation, and even Jughead being complicit, because it's like, no, I'll cover for you. We'll still make it look like, I guess they're just going to make Tall Boy's body disappear. Now, I'm wondering, are they going to go to FP about this? He is sheriff now, so what's going to happen in that regard? I mean, and once again, Claudius is dead, so who had a part to play in that? I assume it's the same person who took the shot against Hiram. Who knows? Because this might be the moment that shifts, that causes, Hiram's big schemes and plans, his castle, his ambitions to come crashing down potentially. What we haven't seen for a little while? Well, I forgot. She got super messed up. She's dead, isn't she? I'm about to say, we haven't seen Penny for a while. I was like, all right, I forgot. Jughead's mom. Yeah, things got bloody. I mean, we don't know if she just got sent off somewhere, messed up. I'm assuming, she might be dead. But even besides that, it's the Ghoulies. We haven't seen them for a while, ever since the Gargoyle gang showed up. Not less that is the Ghoulies that they just kind of moved up. They've ascended, so there is a lot of craziness in Riverdale, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see where they're all going to take this. I'm very excited to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of that. And now moving on to this week's episode of Deadly Class, a crazy episode. It's kind of interesting kind of comparing this episode to last week's episode. It's like, obviously this is an assassin school, but I feel like this episode definitely pushed like almost like the teen drama of like, things, like I like this person and just crazy things that are going on. It was like a very, I guess, character driven episode in a regard. I don't know how to really put it into words. It's kind of interesting to shift to. I mean, not the entire episode was like that, but a majority of it was. I mean, they kind of have like a lot of the stuff where the kids were literally running for their lives to get away, like to get cured for the poison. So it's like, I mean, I guess it's an assassin school, so of course, there's going to be an extremes in that regard, but still, pretty impressive. Marcus ended up being the one to unlock everything. He's the one that actually ended up figuring out the riddle. If it wasn't for him, they'd all pretty much be dead. I did like that point that like Maria, she saved herself, she saved Marcus, she saved everyone else, and then when it came to Chico, she hesitated. I was like, I mean, you wanted him dead, so are you gonna? It's like, no, she left him alive. It does seem like it is a complicated situation going on there, because that whole thing in this episode was crazy, because it's like, oh, her and Chico having this romantic dinner and stuff like that. It's like, oh, and then this dude Emilio shows up. It's like, oh, great, yeah, let's go to party, blah, blah, blah. The whole thing was kind of like, no, I love you. This is a reminder of, this is who I am. I think you needed a reminder of that, because it's like, I know about you trying to get Marcus to kill me, and the fact of the matter is you're going to be my wife, so I'd never hurt you. But the fact of the matter, or I'd never kill you, but if you ever do something like this again, I'll make you wish that you were. And it's like, jeez, man. And I'm guaranteeing you at this point in time, she wishes Marcus had either killed him or she had let him die earlier that day. So, because it does seem like, the way he talks about it like that, it does seem like it is an arranged thing. Because what's interesting, too, is we learned that Saya and Maria are buds. Like, I would have never thought about that. I mean, to be fair, like, this is the episode to kind of really get to learn the dynamics about everybody, because, like, I never would have got that. But they're super good. They're super pals. They're talking about Marcus like that. And then Saya's like, no, let's not talk about it. Maria's like, oh, so we're going to talk about not talking about boys? And it was just kind of interesting. And obviously, like, Saya really does not like Chico, because it's kind of like, oh, do you ever for once think about what Maria wants? He's kind of a very self-indulgent asshole, so I don't know, it's kind of interesting. And now we kind of understand a little bit more, at least in going forward, why she's taken such an interest in Marcus. Obviously, it's because Lynn has, but Lynn made him her pledge. Essentially, whatever Marcus does, it comes back on her. So any good he does comes back on her. Any bad he does comes back on her. So that's why because even during this episode, she's like, okay, breathe in, because I guarantee if he died or something, it would have heavily looked bad on her, in her regard. And then, like, she helped him fight, when the guys in the robe showed up, the fight with she was like, we need to work together. So, it's stuff like that. It was kind of interesting. Also, the kids got super jacked up because they were all running with bloody noses and stuff, with bloody faces and stuff like that. To be fair, some of that's from the poison, because, like, Brandy started bleeding immediately from her nose because of the poison and stuff, So that was an interesting element to it. But what also ties all this together, too, it's like kind of getting to know the characters more. We find out Billy's super into Petra. And, like, Lex kind of screws things up, which pisses Marcus off. But then later on, Billy gets his chance. He tells her the truth, and she kind of has a reaction like, and then, like, the whole Victor thing happened. The thing about that is, like, I'm curious, like, was Petra just doing that to make Billy think something happened? I don't think anything really did. I don't know. Maybe they really are a thing or something. But I kind of feel like the way she was reacting, it was more like, come on, like, I want Billy to think we were doing something when in actuality we weren't. Or maybe she did really do something with him just to push it even more, just because she likes Billy in the sense of like, oh, he's a good person. Because the interesting thing is, even Saya was trying to give him advice about like, no, just go over there. You're a good, nice person. You're not a dick. You've got this, Billy. And it kind of didn't work out. And it's like, oh, you kind of feel so bad for him, because it's like, oh, dude, you're wearing your heart on your sleeve, and you're standing there heartbroken. Even the dude that's there, the adult at the situation in that party who's selling drugs and stuff, is like, man, that sucks. Even he's telling you how shitty your situation is, and that's kind of sad in that regard. Like I said, I'm curious what Petra's mind state was in that regard. Was it just kind of like me and Victor really are a thing, which I highly doubt, or, but the other thing is, like I said, was it more so because she just wanted to kind of ease Billy's feelings? So it's like, oh, make him think I'm sleeping with someone, or does she actually kind of have potentially a thing for Billy herself, but rather than kind of diving down that route? Because they seem like they're buds, so I feel like maybe for her it's like, I don't want to cross that line because it might screw up where we stand and everything. Who knows? I'm very interested to kind of dive deeper into that dynamic. But it's interesting how that all plays out for Marcus in this episode, because for him, he even calls himself out later. He's like, here I am trying to play the hero, did everything he did, like between the whole Chico and Maria situation, helping out Shab, helping out Willie with his assignment, and even stepping up to Lex. He's like, here I am trying to play the hero and stuff like that, which, you know, is kind of interesting, because for him it's kind of like, I'm playing this role just because it is sad, because it ends up getting, you know, brought up, because it's like his desperation to fit in, to belong, you know, to have someone, you know, the people, like, to have friends, to have family, you know, and that's something like Saya brings up later on as being like one of his greatest weaknesses. What I also like about this episode too is like the dynamic between Willie and Marcus, just because like Marcus was kind of calling him out a little bit in front of his, you know, crew, being like, you know, essentially the whole poser thing that he's kind of got, and it's just kind of like, you know, being a little vulnerable and stuff like that. And when you kind of show who you really are, you'll finally see who's there nipping at your feet when or your ankles when the time comes. And him and Willie kind of have a heart-to-heart, because like Marcus snapped on him for like the whole aspect of like telling the story over and over again what happened to Rory, because he was actually haunted by it. He tried to pretend like he wasn't, but the fact of the matter is Marcus isn't the cold-blooded killer he likes himself to believe himself to be. Maybe the whole aspect of kind of playing a role of being like what people kind of think he is, his rep, maybe that kind of really pushed him to think like, oh, I need to, I don't know, that, I guess because it's like he is trying so hard at being an assassin, because he thinks that he'll find himself here, that he will kind of find a home here, that, you know, that's why he struggles and tries so hard. And so that's why he wants to go like, no, I can't let it bother me, you know? To the point, Will actually told him the truth about his situation, which is interesting, because we got another animated scene, which I was curious about whether that or not that was going to be something we see going forward. It does seem like the design of it is different from the one when we learned about Marcus's background. But I'm curious, is it just because that was the pilot episode, or is this because like it is going to be different every time we see it? So it probably at least once every episode we might potentially get one. I don't know. It's definitely interesting. But Willie's actually got a really sad backstory like that. Like, oh yeah, he tried to kill all those guys that were coming from him and his dad, but ended up killing his dad as well. His mom knows the truth, because he kind of talked about it last episode about how his mom kind of pushed him, like she's the real OG and everything. She kind of pushed him into all this to make him a man, because she's the reason he has the rep that he does. It's like, oh, those guys killed his dad and he killed all of them in revenge. It's like, no, he killed his own dad just you know, and because if the truth came out, it looked bad upon her, but also looked bad upon him. So that's why she sent him to King's Dominion, to also essentially rise up to his, like, you know, be worthy of his rep. And even Marcus is like, damn, dude, that sucks. But it's like, it's not your fault. You were a kid back then. But for him, it's like, if anyone found out the truth about his rep, they would kill him, especially anyone in his crew, just because it's weakness. And I think the same thing applies to Marcus. If people are already coming after him anyway. I mean, Chico in particular. But if anyone found out that, like, oh, the whole thing about you killing all those kids isn't true, they'd come like vultures, you know? So him and Willie actually share many different regards in that. I mean, aspects in that regard. And also Willie's like, ever since that day, he promised never to hurt anyone again. So I think we are going to see that continuation potentially of him doing Willie's assignments. I don't know. I mean, when it's all said and done, Lynn kind of found out. I was like, oh, did Lynn know the entire time? Because he did go like, certain things about Willie's story didn't add up. It's like, you were able to take a full-grown man and dump his body by yourself. And then also at the same time, it was kind of like, things just didn't add up for him, and I thought he was going to figure it out on his own, but it turns out the reason why he knows about it is because Saya told him. But to be fair, once again, it's like Marcus's situation reflects her, so I guess she wanted the truth to come out, because if it's like, oh no, Marcus is the one that actually dealt the kill, then she reaps the benefits of it. It's hard to say, because it seems like on one level, it seems like she might actually care about him, but at the other time, it's like, no, it's just her playing a role just because it's like, oh, I need to do this for class, essentially. So it's hard to say. Like, Saya is not an open book, and so it's hard to kind of read her and see what her true intentions are. And I guess that's kind of the whole point. Maybe when we kind of learn more about her, we'll kind of, figure her whole deal out. That party was wild because Shab is like, someone literally shit on the wall. Lex started beating him up with his mom's dildo, Shab's mom's dildo, and then you had Saya cutting it in half. It was just kind of crazy off the walls, you know? And the entire time, like, Marcus is just drinking, just trying to drown his sorrows and stuff like that. It's kind of interesting, too, because Henry Rollins' character took an interest, because obviously, like, one of the kids in class kind of poked fun at Marcus's, like, essentially his white whale kill being, Ronald Reagan, but even Henry Rollins' character kind of has issues with Reagan because it's like, oh yeah, just the way Reagan's handled a lot of stuff, like, oh, I've lost a lot of people because of this and that, and you know, Reagan also won't even publicly even use the word AIDS and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting because Marcus isn't all about like people saying stuff about it. It's like, I want to, you know, it's all about kind of taking action essentially. So it's just kind of like all a fascinating situation in many different regards. I also love that Victor, like, after the whole potentially him and Petra thing, he's walking around butt naked, and then like you have Billy looking at him like kind of brokenhearted and also disgusted, and you have Willie being like, white people, dude. It's just like funny. It's like, for one, it's like, why the hell are you walking around the damn party butt naked? I mean, I guess it didn't fuck with anyone else's vibe, so I guess it's okay. It's just kind of interesting to me. What I thought was really interesting was the whole situation with Lynn taking Marcus to Rory's funeral, and then Marcus being like, oh yeah, Rory was a piece of crap. Nah, like, he did terrible things after his daughter tried to like say all this stuff about him. Side note, I didn't realize this. I was thinking that, but I reckon like that actor, like, I don't know his name. He's been in so many things. Like, even on Sci-Fi, he was in, you know, Sanctuary, Sci-Fi TV show, at least here in the States. He played Finn's dad in The Magicians. You've definitely seen him in a lot of stuff. I didn't realize that was him, just like the full-grown beard and the long hair and everything. I didn't make that out last episode, but nevertheless, it's kind of interesting when like his daughter spits on Marcus and talks about him going to hell. But Lynn, in the end of the day, is like proud of him because it's like, oh, all these murders that were committed by him. But for Marcus, it's like, there has to be another way. He's like, no, don't let that noise get in your head, talking about something like that. But he's like, what am I supposed to do? Just point my gun and pull the trigger when the old man, you know, Lynn, tells him to? For him, it's kind of like, it's okay for it to kind of rattle you, essentially, because eventually you'll realize that the world is better off without someone like Rory in it, that, you know, that at the end of the day, Lynn was proud of him. Like, that's what I'm wondering so much, and that's still kind of the big question. Why has Lynn taken such an interest in Marcus? I guess after hearing Marcus's reputation and seeing him firsthand, like, he sees the potential that Marcus could be. I wonder, has that changed now that Saya told him not only like about the kill and everything and about Marcus's weaknesses, but more so his biggest weakness being the fact is his rep is a lie. Like, he didn't do what he was acclaimed to do. But then Lynn's like, if he didn't do it, then who did? So does that mean Lynn's trying to get that person and not Marcus? But now after the steps that Marcus has made, has that changed Lynn's mind in any shape or form? Because I'm curious too, because I'm sure Saya kind of feels bad because for her it's like, by spilling this, she's putting him in danger. Like, maybe Lynn will kind of let him go because of that. And it's like, because like she said, he's so desperate to have friends and family. Even tries to be friends with that dude, and that dude tells him to eat a dick earlier in the episode. It's like, okay. But maybe she's afraid that anything she says could potentially lead to him leaving here. Like, so it does seem like she does care, or maybe she thought it would reflect, you know, the whole pledge situation. But I think, like I said, I think there are moments peeking through she actually cares about him, you know. So she's actually kind of got more of a big heart than I kind of gave her credit for, because especially last episode she seemed like she didn't have as much of one. But it's like now seeing her interactions with, you know, the situation with Billy and Petra, the fact of the matter is how she, like, you know, talking to Maria, even the whole pill thing, that's kind of like it was something she didn't know, and Maria's like, really, you miss all these secrets? But it's like, yeah, like, don't keep something like that from me. Like, you know, if I found out, someone else will. So it's like she really cares. She probably, I guess because of just the syndicate and everything, she kind of keeps that bottled up potentially. So, because she even had that conversation with Marcus about how, like, you know, love and pain and nostalgia, you know, over the years it will eventually fade away. You know, it becomes like a dye where it just kind of gets so mixed in, but then it's all about changing the color and stuff. Like it was just kind of an interesting conversation, I thought. So it kind of fits with what I'm trying to say about Saya, that she's like complicated. I'll kind of leave it at that. But also we had that dude at the end who's looking for Marcus. He's like my pal Marcus, the kid who burned down that boys' home. He's got a burned face and everything. I'm assuming he must be someone that was from there. Like, he might have been one of the people. Because obviously, like Marcus said, it was kind of like a sweatshop and they did stuff to him. The fact is he has a burned face makes me think he was in the fire. He didn't die, but he got super messed up. So, seems like a bit of a psychopath. Apparently, seemed like he was having sex with a goat. And on top of that, attacking a police officer like that. So, it's like, I'm very interested to see where that's definitely going to take us next episode. Because it's like, Marcus's past keeps catching up to him in some shape or form. Is this something he's even been aware about? Is this something he's been running from? Or is it something that's been happening behind the scenes that he just wasn't aware of? I don't know. Because, like, the only thing they were talked about was, like, the 12 kids that died. We don't know if anyone, like, I guess there were no other adults there that got killed or anything. Maybe just injured, in particular this guy. Was he the one that set the fire? And Marcus kind of got in the way? Because Marcus talked about he beat up a few guards to get out, but that was about it. He didn't kill anybody, so... we'll see, especially going forward, because Marcus was kind of, like I said, struggling with the whole thing. Also, Shab ended up being his roommate. I was actually kind of surprised because I was like, I figured out of any roommate, I thought it would be like Willie or Billy. Either case, but turns out not to be the case. It ends up being Shab, so that's definitely going to be interesting. Also, speaking of Shab, I can't believe he literally came back with the 20,000 it needed to have sex with Brandy. That kind of shocked me. Like, as the way he kind of got all sad about it and stuff like that. But I guess for him, it's like, nah, I'm about to make this happen. It was like, oh, wow, that's crazy, dude. Like I said, I'm so excited to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this craziness. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.